Hello, welcome to Cowboy Red Extra Time. It's yet another international break, meaning Nottingham Forest have time to take stock, and we can do the same. Joining me to discuss hopefully some interesting topics and take a few of your questions. I'm joined first of all by Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, good morning. Al fresco on the move. How are you?
Morning, shouts, greetings from the car park.
Good to have you with us, giving up your time. And our second guest today is Reds fan Mark Sutherns, who you probably know from our FPL shows, but he's also a big Forest fan. So good to have Mark with us. Mark, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, my tech failed me, so I've got the iPad off the bench to rescue this. So I'm delighted to be here.
Well, as we were saying before we started recording, Temps is in his car and Gary does the podcast with a shirt that matches his wallpaper and a phone in his crotch. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You've got a good setup. Actually, we'll just start because obviously you've done episodes before, but you're probably new to a few people who'll be watching and listening to this. I know I said this last time, but you've got the Southern accent, but you do have a Forest story. So without making you tell it in full again, we just regale us with your Forest background.
Yeah, I mean, originally, shamefully, I was an Arsenal fan when I was about 5, when I knew nothing about it. And at that point, everything was red in my bedroom because I was into the football without really knowing what Arsenal was on men. I think only because they had a gun on their badge, right? So I was big on the badges. And then my dad was a Fulham fan. And I think my mum used this mug, this Arsenal must wash my hair. She smashed it. And my dad went, right, he's got to change his team now. And I said, well, they've got to wear red. And then he showed me 2 badges of teams that were doing well in red at the time, Liverpool and Forest, and I chose Forest on the tree, basically. So when we celebrated that badge not long ago, that badge played a big part in me choosing Forest as my team. But my family, other side of my family are up there as well. So I do have connections.
He had a coin flip between Forest and Liverpool, and he's been tortured ever since.
Don't. I don't want to think about that. No, I'm pleased I'm supporting Forest. But I went through a period, obviously, when we were the superior team and we were the powerhouse. But then, Liverpool took over. But don't regret it. It's been more interesting, I'm sure, as a Forest fan.
True.
Interesting is a good word.
I know your uncle goes to games with you or something as well. Occasionally.
Yeah, my cousin goes, and I hadn't seen them for years, and I ran into them year before last at the Swansea game, the Sam Surridge hat-trick, and hadn't seen them for 20 years. So it kind of brought the family together. So it's a nice story.
Good. Well, good to have you with us. Hopefully you'll be a regular in the weeks and months to come. A few topics on the agenda today, away from what we discussed on Monday, although there is some James Ward-Prowse references for Temps' benefit after the loving on Monday. But we'll start with just looking generally at the next 6 games. We've got 4 at home. We've got Brighton and Everton at home, Fulham away, Wolves away, Tottenham at home, and then Bournemouth away take us into Christmas. So only one of the, you'd say the big clubs in Tottenham. It could be not season defining, but it potentially could be Cooper defining, Mark, couldn't it? Because we need some results in the next few weeks.
Yeah, don't say that. I mean, we had this at the start of the season when we saw the fixtures come out, and we were like, "Oh, that looks difficult," because we don't want the pressure on Steve early doors. It didn't happen. We navigated through that largely to the Chelsea win. Yeah, this run is going to be pivotal though when you look at it. I don't think we've got another run like it throughout the season where we've got 4 games chained together that look winnable, and we should get points from these. And I also look at the fact that, at the moment, the squad looks strong in terms of injuries. They're starting to clear. If Aaron keeps together, then I'm confident we can get points out of this run. Brighton look beatable at the moment. There's no doubt about that. Matoma's got an injury. He's just withdrawn from international duty. We're not sure if that's like a phantom injury or whether that's true. But if he misses out, then that's a big factor. They've already got injuries, of course. So I do fancy us against Brighton at home. We turned them over last season. That was a big victory in our run-in. And then Everton at home. Everton are travelling really well this season. I think they're a threat, and we've got to watch set plays because we've just been exposed to that by a certain West Ham player we won't mention. and then Fulham away, Wolves away. Again, you look at those 2 games and we are looking more solid away from home. We do look as though we've gotten a pattern of play that can get us points away from home. We've already done it, of course. And Fulham and Wolves are sides that I think we can have some joy against. So this is a very, very significant part of the season. But we are, despite the defeat of West Ham, I think in good shape to take it on.
How are you feeling about it, Temps? Mark mentions, one year's key. Brighton have got a few issues. There's teams with issues, but we have issues as well. It feels like a succession of games that could go either way for us.
Yes, it's moving time, isn't it? I think we could take points off all of those teams. Not a terrible time to play Spurs with their injury and suspension situations. One or two of our guys getting towards that five yellow card mark. We should be aware of that. But you've called the key selection is Tavares and Toffolo. I just feel so much better about our chances of scoring goals when he's in the team at the minute. Ended his duck, but he's made decent impact since he's been back. I hope this isn't Cooper defining, which is the phrase you used at the outset, because I'm still firmly in the Cooper in camp, and I really hope this is a period now. He's had enough time on the training ground to impose a style that we want to play, to get the right blend out of the midfield in particular. That ongoing debate around centre defence is going to be a biggie, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm confident that we could feasibly get 4 to 6 points from these consecutive home games, and that will create a far rosier outlook.
Do you see anything, Mark, in the theory that we are better against better teams and where we can sit in still and hit them? We're not deep, we're not like super deep lying now, but we can sit in and hit them on the break like a Brighton or a Spurs. Does that favour us potentially still?
Yeah, I think it does. I think just naturally we're going to have less possession, and we're better with less possession and trying to control the game without the ball and counter. That's our game, right? That's the way Cooper wants us to play. And so, when a team comes to the City ground who naturally adopt that style, like Brighton will, then it's going to play into our hands, I would hope. I think Everton will be I think looking at the fixtures, Everton at home will probably be the hardest, in my opinion, because I think they will turn up. They'll be wise to that. They've got the set plays. They've got pace, and on the break, they've got a centre forward in Calvert-Lewin who can probably cause us issues. So of the 4 games, I think that one looks the one that looks the diciest, because, and I think as well, when you talk about Cooper, it's the home matches that are crucial. And I think that while we're forgiving of letting games go like we did at West Ham, I think if we slipped up at home to Everton, that would really put the pressure on. So that's the one I'm worried about most. I think at Fulham and Wolves, similarly, I think Fulham and Wolves will look to have more possession, and that could play into our strength. So I'm optimistic about 3 of the 4 games. It's just that Everton one, which I think is the potential banana skin.
Everton was a nightmare last season, Temps, wasn't it? We really showed our frailties there. A flick on from a punt into the box and stuff like that. We've shown that weakness again at the weekend. We need to eradicate it, don't we?
Similar frustration, because we scored a good goal in that game, didn't we? And looked at times to be in complete control. So, I mean, that the narrative of the past few days has been consistent from all Forest fans. We look sharper going forward. We've got Taiwo in decent form, and we have enough creativity in and around him to score goals. You're backing us to score now, even on the road, and we're back at that point of trying to find some defensive solidity. But I don't think that's necessarily from the defensive selection. Now it's about set pieces, which has to be the focus of training this week, if it wasn't already, because it's an obvious weakness that the opposition will be looking to exploit when they play against us. But yeah, there was some frustration in that Everton game last year. I'm still scarred by that a little bit, and 1 or 2 others too. I'm interested that Mark says that. I just think that any home game is by form, since we returned to the Premier League, we are far superior at home as opposed to on the road. So I'm probably putting more emphasis and more importance on those 2 home games, and forgiving us a little bit more on the road at Wolves and Fulham. But yeah, Mark's absolutely right in terms of the makeup of those sides, but there still is a massive advantage to be gained from playing at the City ground.
Yeah, just on the set piece. Sorry, Matt. Just on the set pieces, I think you're spot on. It is a weakness, and one stat that I took from the West Ham game, we allowed Ward-Prowse more crosses than any other team so far this season. We conceded 9 corners, and he had 13 crosses, and that was what worries me. In that you talked a lot about the problems at the set plays in terms of the desire shown, maybe the marking, but we didn't do enough to cut it off at source. I mean, conceding the most crosses to Ward-Prowse, when surely going into the game we knew that was the danger. I looked at the 2 teams and thought it was very balanced. It was a very even contest, and we were like for like in most areas of the pitch. The one area they were so superior was Ward-Prowse. He was a factor that his set pieces can be the difference against any team. So we must have gone into that game going, watch for that, let's be wary of it. And yet of all the teams they played, we've given him the most opportunities.
I was trying to explain this to David Brutton, and he kicked my head in.
Yeah, but Mark's got the stats to back it up. That's the difference. Good to have lots of people with us. Derek, Dan, Derek in North Carolina, Tom, Miles, Warren, who's going to the Brighton game, Kev, another Dan, and another Derek. There's a lot of Derek's around. Yeah, but good to have you all with us anyway. Do us a favour and drop a like on and subscribe if you haven't. Be very much appreciated. Looking at a few individual players then. One player we didn't discuss on Monday, Temps, was Serge Aurier. I went back and watched the highlights again because a few people were in the comments saying Aurier was poor on one of the goals. I must admit I missed just like how static and flat-footed he was. Obviously not for the first time because there was the Luton incident. I thought he got caught out at Man City for Haaland's header. Where's Aurier at, do you think, at the moment? Because Ola looks pretty nailed now.
It's a different Serge Aurier to the one that we were seeing last season, who disproved all of the Tottenham doomsayers about his sporadic form, about the passiveness, about the mistakes that he had in possession. He produced consistently strong form, particularly towards the end of last season, got himself into that leadership group. He's captained Forest on a few occasions, and for me looked absolutely inked in to be the starting right back. And he's been surpassed now by Ola, who, but for that lazy back pass to Vlachodimos in the previous game, has been rock solid, has lived up to his billing as a great 1v1 defender, and just has that pace, agility, and the ability to read the opposition wingers' movements. Montiel hasn't come to the fore yet, so the importance of Serge Aurier was there for all to see, but he's not getting in the side on form. And the clip that you and I will have seen from the weekend goes back to the start of last season when Forest defence was, yes, deep and compact. And when the low block came in, we did see results, but at times extremely passive. And that seems to be a symptom of Serge Aurier's play at the minute. If he's going to surpass Ola and get back in this side, he needs to make impact from the bench. His bench impact has been really, really poor, and it's on merit that he now finds himself out of the side. I think the best of Serge Aurier starts every week. Needs to recapture that form because he's been a different player this season to what he was last. And I fear for him in the sense that Ola has proved to be a more than adequate replacement. He's flown on under the radar a little bit in terms of potential Premier League ability, but there's a reason why Serie A clubs backed him. There's a reason why he did so well on loan so young in the Championship, and I think he's managed to edge past Serge Aurier. He needs to have a word of himself and recapture the form that he found last season.
What's your take on Aurier, Mark? I mean, there was a lot of talk, and we thought he'd probably go to Saudi in the summer. He's in the final year of a contract extension. Does it feel like maybe his time's moving away, or are you backing him to get back in ahead of Aina?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's harsh on him because I think he was such a key figure last season, and he has transformed as a player to become that reliable defender that at Spurs we didn't see that often. So he's been brilliant for us, there's no doubt. But I think the Ola Aina situation, he's just getting stronger. He's made 2 attacking contributions now, the goal obviously against Villa and a fine assist at West Ham. So it's just his comfort on the ball, and his ability to break against the press as well. I think he's got the edge on Aurier in that respect, and I think that at the moment gives him the shirt. Defensively, I think it's closer. I think Aurier has shown that he can be a mainstay in our defence in terms of his qualities he brings there. But Aina's prone to an error. We've seen it. But I think just comfort on the ball going forward, Aina has the edge. So I don't think Aurier is getting back in at the moment in that system because we've got good width in Aina and Toffolo providing some service. And as we've seen, he did just that. And Aurier, for me, one thing that I've always questioned about is his end product. He can produce. He produced the crosses for Chris Wood, if you remember, in the Sheffield United game, and at times he has delivered on that front, but I think he's also been disappointing in occasions as well. So I think at the moment Aurier's struggling to get back in. When he does get his opportunities, he's got to take them, but he certainly didn't do that at West Ham.
Just a couple of follow-ups on Aurier. One from the comments, but I'll come to this other one first. So Ola only signed a 1-year deal, Temps. Is he already at the stage where we need to be offering him probably a rise and certainly a contract extension to keep him at the club?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what salary level he's on, because I don't think he came in as anything other than an understudy. I think there was an obvious advantage that he's comfortable at right back and left back, and he profiles slightly differently to the defenders that we already had. But I'm sold as on Reina. I'd be looking to extend his deal by at least 2 years, and if a raise in finance is required to do that, then so be it. I think he's more than adequate. I think there's more improvement to come, and the manner in which he slotted that first goal against Villa suggests that he's a good all-round footballer. Far more to come from him. Let's tie him down.
You can answer that, Mark, as well, but also I'll throw this one to you. A good one I hadn't thought of from Greg in the comments about Nico's done well off the bench, and Temps talks about minutes off the bench and making an impact. Maybe Nico's actually better suited to be, the sub that comes on at right or left back instead of Aurier, do you think?
Yeah, he's a bit of a forgotten man, isn't he? And I think it's a bit of a mystery. When we were making the signings in the summer, I looked at it and thought, well, we're setting up for 3 at the back and wing backs. We must be. I mean, we haven't talked about Tavares yet. His signing in particular, for me, indicated that we were going to go 3 centre backs and play wing backs. And that made sense with the number of fullbacks that we had in Williams, Montiel, Aurier, and Aina as well. With Williams and Aina being able to play both sides, it looked as though we were so well stocked in those areas. It must be that we were going to have some rotation, play wing backs, make substitutions in those areas late in the game. It hasn't turned out like that because we've settled, it seems, into a back 4. And now all of a sudden we've just got excess here, and players like Aurier and Williams can't get into the side. I don't think that Williams defensively is as sound as the other options that we've got. I think he is that utility man who can play either side and come on late in a game and bring some energy onto the pitch. I don't think he's a starter at the moment, but I think he is unfortunate because the system that I thought we were going to go with for the entire season isn't there, and I don't see it coming back.
That leads nicely into just a little bit on Toffolo. I mean, he's thrown the cat amongst the pigeons, really, in a sense, hasn't he, Temps? Because there's no way he was. I mean, he was like 4th choice left back, and now he's done so well. He's very much meriting his place. So that kind of prevents a switch to wing backs as well. You've got to give a lot of credit to Toffolo. Is he good enough to hold the place for you, do you think?
His place inside at the minute is completely merited. And he's the winner in exactly the situation that Mark described. So we go out to recruit, expecting to play a back 5 and 2 in the middle. All of a sudden, Sangare, Mangala and Dominguez become undroppable. And Murillo emerges. Cooper feels he can play 2 centre halves, and the whole system unfolds from there, or evolves rather from there. So Nico Williams, a big victim of that. He was brought in as the like for like Jed Spence. At least we thought he was when we were making that acquisition, and now we're seeing classic fullbacks required in a back 4, which seems pretty set in perhaps all but the very best sides of when we play against the very best sides in the Premier League. So yeah, proud of Toffolo actually, because he was written off almost as soon as he arrived. He let us in a little bit more in his pre-match interview against West Ham. When he spoke about mental health struggles rather than just wasting £1,000 on an acca at the weekend, he kind of made that leap that he was having some challenges of his own. Spoke very openly about that, and now he feels born again. And you've got a happy, settled player who's back in the side, playing week in, week out in the Premier League, when perhaps he anticipated a lengthy ban, derailing his football career, let alone his standing at Forest. And now we're seeing the very best of him. No more going forward. I think some of his delivery, his cross for the Awoniyi chance against West Ham, his vision to lay on Aina for the opener. In fact, both goals against Aston Villa. There's a remarkable simplicity to Harry Toffolo's game, and I'm sure debate Morgan Gibbs-White at some point, and his tendency to overcomplicate things. Harry Toffolo sees a pass and plays it. There was nothing particularly complicated about the assists that he's made, but they were effective. He keeps things simple. He does the job that he's asked to very, very well. And for me, he'll keep that place at left back on merit as long as we play a back 4.
He surprised me because I thought he was going to be one of those players that's top end Championship, not quite decent Premier League, but he's come in and he looks very defensively solid. And as Temp says, he's good going forwards. I mean, on Sunday, Mark, Mohamed Kudus was a big test, kind of a rising star in the Premier League. Well, I thought he was West Ham's best player, but he held his own against him, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was my fear when he broke into the side, Toffolo. And I think we went to Liverpool. I was worried about how he would handle Salah because everyone seemed to struggle against Salah. Obviously, he's world class. But I don't think he was too exposed in that game. And against Kudos, he was excellent, I thought. So I don't think any defensive frailties are there to see at the moment. And I've never had a question about him going forward. He got like double figures for assists with Huddersfield. He was always a fullback that brought you something in the final third. And we've seen it. Right? Temps is absolutely right. That vision for the Aina goal against Villa, in particular, I don't think he got enough credit for that because it was, it was Alanga who stretched to play, cut it back. Toffolo's vision to see Aina coming in from the right flank, it was there to be admired. And also, like the pace he puts on his crosses. Let's not forget he set up the Dominguez header earlier in the season as well, with a really well placed cross. He just seems to have that composure in the final third to find that quality pass. And I think he's one of our best exponents of that in the entire team, let alone from the back. So, yeah, he's got to be a starter at the moment. There's no doubt.
Let's move on to a slightly different topic. Temps mentioned Morgan Gibbs-White. I know he's still the big topic of the week, so let's talk around him a little bit. One of the questions is, Temps, what happens when, Hudson-Odoi's fit, Danilo's fit again and could play that role? Is his place back under pressure now?
Well, the one you add to that is Nico Dominguez was dragged at half-time in anger after a series of pretty high-profile mistakes in the game. So could that luxury playmaker role come free again in the centre that Gibbs-White would hold as his best position? Look, there's no doubting he's out of form at the minute. And for all of the stats that Sky lauded and I repeated in light of the West Ham game, he's got 1 assist and no goals this season. And for a player that's been back to become the heartbeat of the side, that level of output is not enough. The back heel out of play was symptomatic, perhaps, of a pressure that he feels sometimes to overcomplicate things. But I'll repeat the point I made before, and it's an important one in Toffolo's style of play. Morgan Gibbs-White has a certain vision and range of passing that is far more valuable to this side than him trying to do three scissors and a back heel. He can execute a pass, the timing of the pass, the weight of the pass, whatever it needs to be to thread in the players that he has in and around him. He's got better minders in the side than he's ever had in Mangala and Sangare. He's got better pace in the side, as good as pace as he's had in the side with Alanga, who I'd back against Brennan Johnson in a foot race. If Hudson-Odoi plays and he's got 2 wingers and he's in the 10 slot, he's got everything he needs to succeed. I don't know if he's trying too hard. I got shot down yesterday talking to Charlie McParland, suggesting that he's probably just exhausted after having a baby on Tuesday and may not have slept in the interim period. But we need more from Morgan Gibbs-White. And the frustration from Forest fans comes because we know it's within him. We know what the best of Morgan Gibbs-White brings to the side. We're just not seeing it at the minute. I think he's slightly unsettled by being put in Brennan Johnson's position without possessing the type of weaponry that Brennan Johnson had. Cooper wants to keep him in the side. He's having to be a make weight on the right-hand side to do that. He doesn't seem quite comfortable, and something needs to change so we can get the best out of him. Look, I'm backing him. I think he's got a long-term future at Forest because he's experiencing a period of indifferent form at this moment in time.
I suppose with better players around him, there's an argument it should free him up to deliver more, but he's still bedding in. I mean, we've all had a say on Morgan Gibbs-White on this podcast, except for you, Mark. So where are you at on him?
He's got to be in the 11. He's got to play because he brings us that something different. He's the player. He's the spark. He's the creative spark. There's no doubt. So I have him in my 11 every time. I think Cooper's struggling to find a role for him. That's the problem. I think the midfield 3, just going back to that, they're just too solid. I don't think we can disrupt that. And just a word on Dominguez, who got flack for the mistake. At the moment, if you look at midfielders with 500 minutes or more, so regular starters in midfield, only Paulina at Fulham, who's probably a standout defensive midfielder in the Premier League, only Paulina's won more tackles and had more tackles than Dominguez this season. And in fact, Dominguez has won a higher percentage of his tackles than Paulina, 78%. Now, that has gone unnoticed because we almost see Dominguez as a box-to-box midfielder, but actually as a defensive midfielder, he's been very successful, second only to Paulina since he's come into the side. So I think he's too important to take out, and because he's playing that role with Mangala and Sangare. And one of the things that I really liked on against West Ham was the combination of Mangala disrupting the West Ham midfield, Sangare winning the ball and then setting Gibbs-White on his way. The Sangare-Mangala partnership, we can't break that up either. So I think that three midfielders have got to stay. And we've got to get Gibbs-White closer to Awani because he's out on the flank. That's not happening. I think a couple of times this season, we've seen Cooper tweak it where he's definitely brought Gibbs-White in behind Awani more and sacrificed that width. And I think that's how we've got to start matches. I think, we're going to play either Elanga or Hudson-Odoi out wide. I don't see both of those starting. And I see Gibbs-White taking one of the flank roles, but he needs to be tucked more inside, closer to Awani. That's where he can do the damage. We saw it at West Ham where it was his shot that obviously fell to Awani. That's the positions we need him in, inside the fullback on that centre-back, looking for those through balls when we turn over possession. And as I've just said, Dominguez, Mangala, Sangare, they are players who are turning the ball over and winning us possession. Looking up, we don't have Johnson's pace. We do have Gibbs-White and Awani, and it's just Gibbs-White is too peripheral at the moment. He's starting positions too wide, and we need him closer to Awani. That's where we unlock the best of Gibbs-White.
Are you taking him off set pieces? That was a discussion we had on Monday.
Yeah, I think for set pieces, for me, there's no variety there. We need Toffolo and Gibbs-White over the ball, so the defence doesn't know what to expect. At the moment, they see Gibbs-White behind it. They know it's going to be the in-swing and it's going to be right-footed delivery. And it's just too choreographed. It's just too obvious, I think. When you put Toffolo over the ball as well and you've got that variation, we might have more success. And when you've got Toffolo in the side, you're wasting him if you're not putting him on set pieces, I think, because he's got that delivery. And therefore is crying out for that. I'm not saying take Gibbs-White off them. I'm just saying put them both on them, introduce a bit of variety to get the opponent to think about it. Because at the moment, it's just too predictable, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. I've not thought of that. Even if Toffolo takes 2 a game or something, I think that would shake out. That's true. If you're liking this video, do us a favour and subscribe. There's 250 people with us, which is great. On something, you're laughing at my graphics. It's so amateurish because you do black box and you've got amazing graphics.
I'll get you a better one, mate. I'll sort you out with that.
Actually, I'll give a plug for Mark because if anyone plays FPL, he does FPL Black Box podcast. So do watch that. It's slicker than this operation. Certainly, and that's how he's armed with all these stats. Certainly, what are you laughing at? You are sat in a car, so it's true.
Well, it's kind of gleefully disarming, isn't it? You're like the lack of self-congratulation that you have. But I just Mark's ashamed of your graphics there. He's far too polite to say it, and he's still pulling out Dominguez stats that are in of themselves world class. So I just have a little chuckle at that. But yeah, time for new graphics, Davies.
I know. Well, yeah, there definitely will be some coming. Don't worry, there will be. Just touch on Danilo as well. We sort of discussed him a little bit on Monday. I went back and watched the highlights, and Don Goodman was saying he made a really big impact at the start of the second half, and he did because he held the ball up and played. I think it was a Lang attempts when they played that 1-2 with a 1-1. He should have scored, and he had a hand in the goal. So he did have these moments. He doesn't look quite back to where he was last season for me. But like Mark says, he's got such a problem because you're not breaking up that back three. We've already said Gibbs-White needs to play. You need the pace for Langer. So what do we do with Danilo? Does he have to just bide his time till Afcon, which we'll come on to?
Well, he needs to jump in when there's a 1-match suspension off the back of totting up, doesn't he? The 5 yellow card thing is going to affect the central midfield 3. So that's Danilo's in. And he has to grab the chance. He's so dynamic. He offers a bit of everything. And I think, as I said before, that's why he's ahead of Yatesy as the next cab off the rank in that position. Just needs a spark. When his swell of form last year, his spell of goal scoring last year was consistent, wasn't it? He was one of the first names on the team sheet in and around that period where he was scoring goals, and Forest got the points to ease themselves away from the drop zone. So there's a plan for Danilo. He's probably in that Brennan Johnson spot as being the next saleable asset, if it's not Murillo, that needs to attract 30, 40, 45 million quid to allow the current Forest recruitment model to continue. But he's only going to do that if he's in the side and playing well. I'm backing him to get in the side in the next 3 or 4 games, either on the back of form or on the back of a yellow card suspension for somebody else. And he needs to put on a showing because he can win. He can live with the level. He can win games with Forest, and he can be more of a goal scoring threat from centre mid.
He's got such a high ceiling, hasn't he, Mark? I mean, I'd say his ceiling's. I love Mangala this season, but in terms of monetary value and what he can do on the pitch, Danilo probably is above him and above Dominguez, as good as Dominguez has been. Like, Danilo's the one that could be worth 50 million quid and be a match winner. He just needs time and a bit of maturity, I guess, to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, he was much coveted before he arrived at the City Ground, wasn't he? There were a lot of teams watching him, so he had a reputation. I know Arsenal were monitoring him earlier. So I think he is a very sellable asset in a few seasons. I'd like to think we'll get a few more seasons out of him. For me, I struggle to define what he is, because I think when he arrived, there was a feeling that he was a deep line playmaker. He played deep and set up play with his passing. He's got the vision to do that, but I think in that role, he's been caught out a few times. He's dwelt on the ball and he's been slack with his passing, and he's put us in trouble when playing deeper. And then we saw the tail end of last season in playing further forward, and he got those vital goals. He played a massive part in keeping us up. He surprised me with the composure he showed in the penalty area to take those chances, and that made us think that perhaps he's more a box to box, maybe a number 8. I think that's probably the role that we have him in going forward. So I think when the suspensions come, Dominguez will drop back and Danilo will take that spot, that one that's further forward and the closest to supporting Awani down the middle. But I still think long term it's a bit like Gibbs-White. We don't know what his role is yet in our 11. If he breaks into 11, where does he play? What function and role does he play? I think Cooper's got to figure that out as well. So he's a puzzle, I think, as well.
And we normally mention Andre Santos. We haven't mentioned him on this podcast. Mark mentioned Tavares, 2 loan signings who weren't even in the squad. Tavares is one they'll have to buy temps if he plays a certain number of games. It's probably pretty low, knowing how Forest have done these loan deals. Do you think we might even have seen the end of Tavares already, potentially?
Neither of those players are anywhere near it, unfortunately. It probably takes 3 injuries or suspensions for Andre Santos to get game time at Forest at this moment in time. And Tavares is another victim of the back 4 and the rise of Harry Toffolo. So I can answer this one really quickly. I think they probably both depart in January.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, Santos is odd, isn't it? I can't help but think that was just a safety net in case we didn't get Sangare, and that's the way it's turned out. I don't think he's near the 11. Chelsea fans will say he's an incredible talent and it's a real waste, and I haven't seen enough of him to go against that. So I think it is a shame for the player, and obviously Chelsea aren't getting what they need from it. So I think Tempty's right; he'll go back. Tavares is a strange one. I think he's not a left back in a back 4. There's no way he's good enough to do that. What he is a marauding wing back. And when he arrived, I was really positive about his signing because I thought that was the system we were going to go with. And in that system, Tavares can be a weapon, but it's not going to happen while we're playing a back 4. So, yeah, I'm with Temps. They're both going back, I think, in January.
We'll be here for another 10 minutes or so, maybe 15. So we'll take some questions if anyone's got any. There's plenty of people watching. So if you've got some, drop some in. While we do that, we'll just touch on one more topic around Afcon. I mean, we mentioned it briefly last week, but we've got 7 players, Temps, who could go. They play for some of the biggest countries. They could potentially miss 4 Premier League games and 2 FA Cup games if they go all the way. I don't think they're going to miss that many, but, say Ivory Coast make the final, that's Sangare, Aurier, and I think there's 2 others off the top of my head who I've forgotten, but concerned or not?
Well, yeah, it's going to impact the spine of the team, isn't it? Taiwo, Sangare, Bolly in particular. I think that's a real miss, but it's opportunity for others, and it's why we carry these squads of 25. And the debates that we have around team selection just become that little bit more complex. Thankfully, with geography, Brazil won't be competing in that tournament, and we'll perhaps see those guys come to the fore even more. So, yeah, look, one man's disappearance from Forest is another man's opportunity, and necessity is the mother of invention. The reason why we found some of the pairings combinations that did so well last year was because of the teams we selected for games like Spurs in the Cup. And what was supposed to be rest and rotation became a selection which stuck even when players came back into contention. So there'll be winners from this, and players will emerge and succeed and see this opportunity, be biding their time, waiting for this moment when they get on the plane, so they can jump into the frame and hopefully carry on with the form that Forest find by that point. Need to keep Chris Wood fit, for example. He's going to be crucial in the continuity of the style of play when Tyro disappears. And the disappearance of Sangare will certainly allow for us to see the best defensive qualities of Dominguez and perhaps Danilo coming back into the side. So yes, it'll be a problem, but the depth and the strength of the next 3 or 4 players into the side don't concern me anywhere near as much as they would have done last season.
Let's move into some questions then. Just a comment say Mark's doing a good job. So from Emma, there you go, Mark. I'm sure you're happy to be receiving praise. It's better than criticism. So thanks for that, Emma.
The iPad, that's good.
Yeah, when Mark's on next time, he's got an amazing setup. So, but yeah, like I say, Temp's in his car, so it's not really relevant. But no, it's good to have Mark with us. Let's go to who else will we offload in January? Robin asks. I suppose Mark McKenna kind of stands out. There's a few other fringe players that are nowhere near it. Joe Worrell hasn't been in the squad for the last 2 games. Are there going to be some departures, or with Afcon, are we going to have to carry this big squad still?
I guess that's going to depend a lot on whether there's any incoming as well. And I do wonder, we showed a lot of interest in young strikers, potential long-term options in the summer. There was a lot of discussion around several Brazilians, surprise, who could come in to kind of deputise for Avenue. And I do wonder whether that's on the cards again, whether we'll go back and try for one of them, because of all the Afcon situations that we've got, and I think we're one of the most heavily affected teams, the Avenue thing is the one that really worries me. Yes, we're going to lose Niakate Sangare, but I think Temps is right. You know, the signings we made in the summer were all about squad depth, and we've got that now. When you look at the 25, I'm far less worried than I was last season about that. So I think with Niakate and Sangare, I think we've got options to come in and do the job. With Avenue, yes, I think Chris Wood has got the monkey off his back with the 2 goals against Luton, but I do worry that that is a bigger jump. You know, losing Avenue and replacing with Wood, there's a gap there between what the 2 players bring, I'm afraid. So I do wonder if we're going to go back in for a striker option in January, whether there's the funds there, whether FFP will allow it, I don't know. So I think the incoming may affect who goes out. McKenna is sellable, there's no doubt. I think there are teams in Scotland who would want him. He's still getting international recognition. There are championship sides who would take him as well in a heartbeat, I'm sure. I guess there's Kurati as well, who slipped down the pecking order, who could go out, and we talked about Aurier too. So there's 3 or 4 I think would be potential to move on, but I think it will depend on the business we're going to do in terms of bringing players in.
A couple of people asking about a striker we could sign. The name that was most prominent was Mateus Nascimento, I think, from South America. He's only 19, Temps. There's a bit of a gamble there. So do we have to really probably rely on Wood realistically, unless we can go out and get Batshuayi or find 20 million quid down the back of the sofa?
Well, we've got a market intelligence in Brazil, which has proved very successful the last 3 times we've dipped into it. So I'm excited about any prospect that we pull out of there, because wherever that information is coming from, it's accurate and is proving advantageous in spotting rough diamonds that can go on to become very, very strongly established players on the world stage. And I genuinely believe Murilo in particular will go on to do that. So yes, I do trust whatever scouting network we've got in Brazil. I'll add Nico Williams to that list of potential departures, because I think it's in his interest to get a move at the age he's at and the amount of time he's spent already being a bit of a bit part player at Forest in a system that he can see he isn't suited to. So I think that's one that the player will be pushing for themselves. The striker thing's interesting. I mean, it was Chris Wood is very much a Steve Cooper signing. He pushed really hard for him, and before that injury, we did see the best of Chris Wood in that game. It was his best performance for Forest before he had that unfortunate disappearance. Again, Origi appears to be a miss. He had that shot on target, didn't he, in the dying seconds against West Ham, but I don't think he's a guy that we're going to trust anytime soon. So I think strengthening the striker options would be my priority in January, even if that is a loan move, given that Taiwo has been identified as the man, and upon his return from Afcon, he'll be straight back in that spot. So pleasing that the rumour mill is whirring and we're looking at strikers. Chris Wood does deserve the first crack for me. I don't think Origi's anywhere near. And I'd be excited if we were able to pull somebody in, even if it was a relative unknown from Brazil.
Chris Wood still divides people in the comments. In fact, the comments are mostly negative about him today. He's actually won me over this season a bit. I think the trouble is he's not Taiwo, he's not mobile, but he's done a job. He's got a couple of goals. So, yeah, he's okay, but there is a huge drop-off. I mean, is Taiwo an elite Premier League striker already, Mark, do you think? There's not many like him around. He could get into a lot of Premier League teams, couldn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he's there yet. I think there's the raw material though is outstanding. The athleticism that he's got and his composure that he shows when given chances is coming on. His progress. I think when he first arrived, he was a bit headless. He obviously had the pace and the energy up front, and he wasn't holding the ball up efficiently. I think he's come on a lot in that respect, though. I think now when the ball goes up to Aurier, I expect him to stick. We saw the other day when him and Alanga had that partnership, and they almost walked through the West Ham defence. That kind of epitomised how Aurier has come on. That first touch, that awareness of players around him to lay the ball off, and also the running off the ball was impressive in that little cameo. So I think that he's progressing at a rate that would suggest that this time next season we're going to have people sniffing around for sure. I think he is a 20-goal striker in the making. Don't think he's there yet, but there's no question he's absolutely vital to how we set up. And I think that's my biggest concern going into that Afcon period, is that we will miss him because of the role that he plays.
There's a question from Richard that I don't know the answer to, but I'll put it up because people might be interested. About South American qualifiers for the Olympics, we have to reach Murillo and Danilo. I suspect not. I think Premier League clubs will find a way to keep them. So, yeah, one to monitor. There was another question here, Temps, and I can't find who asked it. The filling in the corners at the City Ground came up before, and now they've got this the World Cup thing with the shipping containers. What do you think about it? It's a temporary measure, I guess, or is it a long-term measure? What do you reckon?
Well, we haven't really heard from the new chairman in this regard yet, who's a recognised expert in development of major building and infrastructure projects. But we do know from projects elsewhere that rebuilding that main stand is 50 to 60 million straight off the bat. So any opportunity they will find to fill in a corner, to develop the fan zone, to do whatever they can do to drive incremental commercial revenue to make us even more of a force relative to those teams we play against in the Premier League, they will do. So my instinct is that those smaller projects, those filling in the corners, those adding seats here and there, improving corporate facilities, whatever it might be, to drive commercial income, will be implemented, and is far easier to implement than a main stand project tied to massive blocks of residential housing on the banks of the river. It's whirred on for so long that we can all see that the complexity of that. And one thing we know our owner has a lot of is patience in a positive sense. He wants quick action. He wants quick improvement. He's prepared to finance it. And if there's steps he can make to get towards the end goal, then he'll take them. What I would take from any kind of development of the City Ground is a firm indication that that's where we're gonna stay. We're going to move away from this debate about brownfield site on the edge of town and commit to getting that place towards 40,000 cap to allow us to compete with more sides in the Premier League. So what's my hunch? I think we'll see us fill in a corner long before we build a new main stand.
It was Simon Alton who asked that question, by the way, so you couldn't find it, but thank you for that one, Simon. Right, I think we'll probably leave it there. Anything you want to add before we depart, Mark?
No, just on that point though, I think anything that gets us more tickets and improves the atmosphere in the City Ground, not that it needs improving, is going to be a big plus, right? So getting more bodies, more voices in that ground is only going to help us. Every time I drop in on away fans doing stuff on YouTube, they always talk about how noisy we are, how loud it was, and we've said before, there's no doubt that has an impact on the opposing fans. It keeps them quiet, reduces them being a factor. but it also impacts the away team. We don't know how much, but it does have an impact. So getting towards that 40,000 capacity will be huge for us, not just for the city because more people can come and watch the games, but also increases the role that the atmosphere has. And I just don't want that to drop. So anything we do to keep that up and strengthen it even more is a win for me.
Temps, anything from you before we move on?
I was just going to say, I'm going to get in the habit of contacting Mark for stats before every podcast appearance, because I think that how you see a player and how you frame what they're good at, you've got to watch a game every 90 minutes, but look at the numbers is important too. And framing Dominguez as a defensively effective player, despite his advanced position, shows the value he brings to the team, because that is high turnovers, that is winning the ball unexpectedly, that is us becoming a pressing side, and a massive demonstration of how effective he's been in that. However, if you whack a straight pass against a 6'8" lad in centre mid and the opposition score from it, Coops is still going to hoik you at half time and have a stern word. So really interested to see the next team that we pick. Really interested to see if he reverts to two wingers or tries to accommodate Morgan Gibbs-White or sticks with the status quo. But so many reasons to be positive. And I will back us to win our next game.
That was a good start about Polina, because Polina loves a yellow card. If a ref had booked him in a game when he really should have done, I would have won 50 quid on a bet, but he really showed some leniency then. Just quickly,
he should have got a red. Should have got a red at Villa, shouldn't he?
I know. Just quickly before we go, Mark, on stats, obviously you do a lot of stuff around that. What value do you place on stats versus eye test, as you call it? Because a lot of our viewers might be skeptical around the stats, but I see a value.
Yeah, no, I just use them for like confirmation of stuff and to raise awareness of things that perhaps I haven't noticed watching games. I mean, you can't watch every game. You can't watch every player on the pitch, even when you watch a game. So I think what the data does, and we know that clubs use it. I mean, like some clubs base their entire scouting network on data. I won't mention Brentford because I know it upsets Greg, but yeah. So there are teams out there who rely on data heavily. As someone, I mean, on the website that I bought OptaStats, to that website years and years and years ago. So I was like one of the first to jump on data as something that could be used in what I did in fantasy football. Since then, it's crept into the mainstream of football. We're seeing it on Match of the Day now, and XG turns up on there every week, right? So I stand by using it as a tool to raise awareness, but it doesn't replace watching matches for me or watching players for me. We scout players using both the data and using scouts to go and watch players playing matches. And that's how I approach it as well. It needs to be twofold. You can't have one without the other.
No, I think that's true. You get more of that on FPL Black Box if you play FPL on. Is it tonight? No,
won't be anyone this week. We take a break, an international break, but we'll be back next week if I can fix my setup. I'm not going to be on an iPad on Black Box. That's for sure.
We'll check it out, people, if you haven't checked it out before. Thanks to everyone who's watched along. Lots of comments, very much appreciated. Me and Greg are off to the Football Content Awards tonight, so I'll report back if we win. I don't think we will. We're up against some.
Good luck with that, Matt. I'm rooting for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, you're up as well. You just can't be there. So
no, we can't be there, but we'll see.
Yeah,
you can go up on his behalf and make a speech. You can accept on behalf of Mark, Matt, and do a Gwyneth Paltrow.
I might do if I lose out on 2 awards tonight. Yeah, it'd be nice to get some adulation for something I've had nothing to do with. Yeah, certainly. Thanks very much to everyone who's watched along. Temps, thank you.
Cheers, chap. See you soon.
Mark, thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks, Matt. It's great to be on.
You'll be back with us some more, hopefully. We shall be back next week previewing the Brighton game. So do join us for that. In the meantime, have a good few days, and we shall see you soon.